going to talk briefly about some of the equipment we have deployed to bring that data from the outside and populate that in, and kind of touch on some of the history and some of the things we've ran across since I've been here. Real briefly, this is one of the modules that we use to transmit the data. Whatever it is you're collecting, I don't care if it's weather, sewer flow, temperature, water quality, any number of variables, this is what we're going to use to transmit that data. And it's no different than, say, your cell phone. Basically, it's the same concept. It's going to capture that data that's stored in the module, and it's going to transmit through a cellular service. And if you can see inside of here, you probably can't, but there's actually a little modem. It's no different than your phone. And it's sealed for use outside to expose the elements. So here, again, a lot of different types of things we do. Here's a water quality sign. This is something you'll see in a creek, river, lake. We're trying to actually capture real-time water quality. You can see turbidity, conductivity, ORP, pH, temperature. You get your various probes here. This is going to collect all that information. Every few minutes it just basically takes a snapshot, almost like a camera. It takes a snapshot of what it sees and all these parameters, and then uses that modem, again, like your telephone, like your cell phone, to push that data to that central server, relatively real time. You can do it every few minutes that it populates in the server, or if you want to conserve your battery life in the field, you don't have a solar panel, then you can slow down how often it updates. That brings me to some of the batteries we use is just a simple lantern battery for a temporary installation, and we're not using a solar panel. It's easy enough just to get a simple lantern battery and properly recycle it when we're through. And once the study or whatever it is we're doing is complete, we can recycle the batteries and recover the equipment. We don't need as much real-time data in those instances. So, it talks about the water quality, some of the power sources, how we transmit it. Here is some of the other things we do is we capture rainfall data. If you look inside of here, you see a funnel. Basically what this is doing is standing upright. Rain comes, falls into here. The screen keeps debris and things like that from clogging up the funnel. And that water gets through the funnel and pushes it into our tipping bucket rain gauge. Okay, what that does, it fills up on one side and it tips. And what's happening, it's a reed switch right here. We apply a voltage, that reed switch passes and it closes that contact almost like a light switch. That sensor feels that voltage pulse. It says, all right, that's 1/100th of an inch of rain. So again, to think of it holistically, it's raining, it's going through the funnel, tip, 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 counts every pass. 1/100th of an inch of rain. That's how a tipping bucket rain gauge basically works. All right, and we touched on the modem, and here's actually an older flow meter we've got right here. We actually called these the Darth Vader helmet. These are circa 96, 97 that we had these out in the field. Had a lot of problems with them, but it just shows over time how technology is evolving, and we got to continue to stay plugged in. Not only technology itself, you've got to think about safety and safety of your staff, and that brings me to a couple of instances that were interesting in my time. I would say back in probably about 98, I had to do a dive in the Arm Clayton bypass. And as I'm going down this bypass, I caught in my peripheral vision something pretty big, but it was on the side of the wall. And it felt like it was moving, so I looked over to see it. And it's as big as a sprinkler head, if you will. The body of it was probably as large as this, and it was a spider. This actually took some pictures because it was so huge. And little did I know, as I shined my light further down in the tunnel, they were everywhere. It was something like out of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom with the spiders crunching all your feet, but my objective still had to be met. We had our mission to get in there and change and work on the instrumentation. There was no option. So that's some of the elements that we get exposed to inside the manhole. And here's one of the nice critters we've came across over at near Fort McPherson by East Point, which is a Midland water snake. You can see he's a pretty healthy guy. This is the time of year in our safety talks that we talk about some of the elements that they're going to be exposed to: ticks, snakes, spiders, things of that nature. So we try to be really safety conscious and keep our eye on the ball. As technology is evolving, that's something we have to focus on. As with that, also your safety knowledge is evolving too over time. Another good example in history that we didn't anticipate that we've learned from is I was doing a dive late 90s by Hemp Hill treatment plant. And at the time we were trying to identify where this water was coming from that was showing up at Tanya Creek CSO. We couldn't identify it, so we deployed monitors, we're investigating, we're leapfrogging, we're doing tracking, and eventually we came to a manhole that we could see that was surcharging, wasn't associated with rain, so we installed monitoring equipment. Came back to work on the equipment because it kept failing early. As I'm in the manhole, it's a pretty large manhole, it's about 42 inches. I felt wind blowing my face and my hair way back before it was gray. And I could feel the wind, all of a sudden I start hearing something like a train. And this is, you're down 25 feet in the pipe, you're feeling wind, you're smelling chlorine, and there's rebar and sharp objects pointed all around you. Luckily, I was tethered, I had a fall arrest, I had a gas detector, and I yelled and they started cranking me up. And as soon as they did that, as soon as my feet cleared that pipe, a wall of water rushed through. And we later identified, and they're pulling me up, and as they're pulling me up in this thing, it's surcharging up into the manhole. So the water's catching up and it's almost touching my feet, they're cranking away. This is right by Hemp Hill, right by the paper, Institute for Paper Science. And after they got me out later, we determined when they backwashed a tank at Hemp Hill, our own folks, it washed down that line. And there was no time limit when they did it, it's just it would happen periodically. So these are some of the safety things we have to take in consideration that you just don't know what's going to happen when you go inside these manholes. Who's going to flush, what type of chemical. We're even downstream from the CDC, if you think about that. Think about all the nasty stuff that goes on a CDC and we're having to get inside a manhole. So these are things to be very cognizant of. We're very hyper aware of safety, PPEs, and we don't go into things like we know everything. We're always trying to learn more.